I was sitting in my home studio, the familiar mess of canvas prints scattered across the floor, tech monitors glowing faintly in the dim light, and half-finished projects leaning against the walls. My fingers were smudged with paint from messing around earlier, and the air smelled like turpentine and coffee. It was a normal Thursday afternoon, or so I thought. Then my phone buzzed on the desk, cutting through the quiet hum of the room. I glanced down, expecting a text from Clara nagging me about picking up groceries or something. Instead, it was a notification from Forbes. My heart stopped for a second as I read the headline. Forbes billionaire list. Meet the reclusive digital art mogul behind a $5.1 billion NFT empire. And there it was, my name, in bold, staring back at me like some kind of surreal joke. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, and read it again. Public. Out there. No going back now. The weight of it hit me slowly, like water seeping into cracked ground. For 12 years, I'd kept this life hidden, my real life, not the one everyone thought I had. My wife, Clara, her parents, Gerald and Margaret, her whole family, they all saw me as the struggling artist, the guy barely scraping by on odd jobs and hobby projects. I let them think that. It was easier that way. Less explaining, less arguing. But now the mask was off, and I could feel the ground shifting under me. On the desk next to my phone sat a gold-lettered invitation, fancy and crisp, for the family reunion happening in 2 days at Gerald and Margaret's sprawling estate. I'd been dreading it for weeks. Clara had even pulled me aside yesterday, her voice sharp as she said, "Please, just don't embarrass the family this time." She'd meant don't show up in my paint-stained jeans, don't ramble about art no one cared about, don't give her dad another reason to look down his nose at me. I'd nodded, kept my mouth shut, like always. But now, with that Forbes alert glaring up at me, everything felt different. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. How was this even happening? I mean, I knew it was coming eventually. Jules, my assistant, had warned me last month that the magazine was sniffing around my business. She's brilliant like that, always 2 steps ahead, with her deadpan voice and ruthless way of handling things. "They're on to you," she'd said over the phone, no emotion, just fact. "Your anonymous days are numbered." I'd shrugged it off then, told her to keep the jet on standby and the island prepped, just in case. But seeing it live, seeing my name tied to billionaire and mogul, it felt like someone had kicked the legs out from under my chair. Clara didn't know. Her parents didn't know. None of them did. For 12 years, I played the part they wanted me to play. The broke dreamer married to their perfect daughter, the guy they pitted at every holiday dinner. I drove a beat-up old truck, wore clothes that looked like I'd pulled them from a thrift store bin, let them pick up the tab when we went out. Why? Because every time I tried to tell them about my work, about blockchain, NFTs, the digital galleries I was building, they'd laughed or rolled their eyes. "That's cute," Gerald had said once, patting my shoulder like I was a kid with a lemonade stand. So I stopped trying. I built it all in secret instead. Now the secret was out, and I didn't know whether to laugh or panic. I picked up the phone again, scrolling through the article. It had everything. My first NFT dropped 12 years ago, the anonymous platform I'd launched that took off like wildfire, the licensing deals, the acquisitions. They even had a photo of me from some random conference I'd spoken at years back, one I'd forgotten about. Reclusive, they called me. I guess that was true. I'd stayed out of the spotlight, kept my head down, let the work speak for itself. But $5.1 billion? That number stared back at me, cold and real. I'd known I was doing well, hell. I'd bought a private island last year, hadn't I? But seeing it laid out like that made it feel bigger, heavier. And the timing couldn't have been worse. 2 days from now, I'd be walking into that reunion, facing Clara's family with no way to hide anymore. I set the phone down and ran my hands through my hair, trying to think. Clara would see this soon, if she hadn't already. Her phone was always buzzing with news alerts. She loved keeping up with the world, loved knowing things before everyone else. What would she say? What would she do? Just last night, we'd been in the kitchen, her chopping vegetables for dinner while I pretended to help. She'd sighed, loud and dramatic, and said, "I wish you'd figure out something stable, you know? My parents keep asking when you're going to grow up." I just smiled, nodded, let it roll off me like I always did. Stable. She had no idea. And her parents, God, Gerald and Margaret were the worst. Old money types, stiff and judgmental, always acting like I was some charity case they'd taken in by letting me marry their daughter. Margaret with her fake smiles, Gerald with his lectures about real work. They'd spent years looking at me like I was nothing. And now? Now they'd have to eat every word. I stood up, pacing the studio, my boots scuffing against the hardwood floor. The invitation caught my eye again, sitting there all smug and proper. 2 days. 2 days until I'd walk into that reunion, and they'd all know. Part of me wanted to call Jules right then, tell her to fire up the jet and fly me somewhere far away, maybe the island, where I could sit on the beach and let this blow over. But another part of me, the bigger part, wanted to see their faces. I wanted to watch Gerald's smug grin falter, watch Margaret's pearls tremble as she clutched them, watch Clara try to figure out how she'd missed this for 12 years. I'd been invisible to them, a shadow in their perfect little world. But not anymore. The truth was out, and it was mine to own. I stopped pacing, grabbed my phone, and texted Jules. It's live. Plan reveal starts now. Her reply came back in seconds, short and sharp like always. On it. I took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline start to pump. This was it. The mask was off, and I was ready to step into the light. I was still reeling from the Forbes alert, my phone sitting heavy in my hand, when it buzzed again. This time, it wasn't some news app. It was Franklin, Clara's brother, calling me. I stared at the screen for a second, his name flashing like a warning sign. Franklin was the loud one in the family, always joking, always poking at me for being the starving artist. I figured he'd seen the article by now. No way he'd miss something this big. I swiped to answer, holding the phone to my ear as I leaned against my desk, the clutter of my studio pressing in around me. Hey, Franklin, I said, keeping my voice steady, like nothing was different. You seriously on Forbes? He blurted out. No hello. No warm-up. Just straight to it. His voice was high, almost squeaky, like he couldn't believe it. Billionaire? Are you in witness protection or something? What's going on, man? I could hear the panic in his tone, the way he was scrambling to make sense of it. I let out a small laugh, more to myself than to him. Yeah, it's me, I said simply. No witness protection. Just me. There was a long pause on his end, like he was waiting for me to say it was a prank. When I didn't, he let out a low whistle. Holy crap, he muttered. Clara's gonna lose her mind. You know that, right? I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. My eyes flicked to my phone screen as a text popped up, Clara. Just a link to the Forbes article in 3 words. What the hell? No emojis, no questions, just that. Sharp, cold, demanding. I could picture her sitting at her desk in our living room, her perfect hair pulled back, her lips pressed tight as she stared at her phone. She hadn't called yet, hadn't stormed in like I half expected her to. Just that text, sitting there like a loaded gun. I switched back to Franklin, who was still rambling. I mean, dude, how? You've been driving that rusty truck forever. You let Mom and Dad pay for dinner last month. What's the deal? I rubbed my temple with my free hand, feeling a headache starting to creep in. It's a long story, I said, which wasn't a lie but wasn't the whole truth either. Look, I'll see you at the reunion, okay? We'll talk then. I hung up before he could push more, dropping the phone onto the desk like it was burning my hand. They were all scrambling now. I could feel it. Franklin freaking out, Clara stewing in silence, probably her parents next once the news trickled up to them. And me? I was just standing there in my paint-splattered jeans, the same guy they'd mocked for years, except now they'd have to rewrite everything they thought they knew. I hadn't told anyone, not Clara, not her family, not even my own parents before they passed. I'd kept the illusion alive on purpose. The truck? I'd bought it cheap 10 years ago, kept it running just to blend in. The clothes? Old habits from when I really was broke, plus they were comfortable. Letting them pay for dinner? That was just me biting my tongue, letting them feel big while I sat on a fortune they couldn't even imagine. Why didn't I say anything? Because I tried, back in the beginning. I'd sat Clara down once, showed her my sketches for a blockchain art platform, explained how NFTs could change everything. She'd smiled, patted my hand, and said, "That's nice, honey, but maybe focus on something practical." Gerald was worse. Every time I mentioned digital art, he'd snort and launch into a speech about how real men worked with their hands or wore suits, not played with computers. So I stopped talking. I built it anyway, piece by piece, in silence. I walked over to the window, pushing it open to let some air into the stuffy room. The street outside was quiet, just a couple kids riding bikes, the faint hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the block. It looked so normal, so small compared to what was happening in my head. My phone buzzed again, another text, this time from the family group chat. Franklin had dropped the Forbes link with a string of shocked face emojis. Margaret replied fast. Surely there's some mistake? No question mark. Just that prim, proper tone she always had, like she couldn't fathom me being anything but a failure. I didn't respond. Let them stew. Clara still hadn't called, which was weird. She's not the type to sit quiet when she's mad. She's all fire and noise, storming around until she gets answers. Maybe she was too shocked to move. Or maybe she was embarrassed, realizing she'd spent 12 years married to a billionaire and never noticed. I turned away from the window, my eyes landing on a framed photo on the shelf, me and Clara at our wedding, smiling like the world was ours. Back then, I thought I'd win them over eventually, prove myself with hard work and big ideas. But that first year, Gerald pulled me aside at Thanksgiving, his voice low and serious. Art's a hobby, son, he'd said, sipping his whiskey. You'll never provide for her like this. Come work for me. I'll set you straight. I'd clench my jaw, thanked him politely, and walked away. That night, I promised myself he'd eat those words one day. Not just him, Margaret with her pitying looks, Clara with her little sighs every time I talked about my projects. I'd make them see. And I did, didn't I? $5 billion later, here I was. But it didn't feel like a win yet. It felt like a storm about to break. I sank into my chair again, staring at Clara's text. What the hell? I could have texted back, explained everything, the late nights coding, the deals I'd signed under aliases, the money piling up in accounts she never knew about. But why should I? She'd never asked. None of them had. They'd assumed I was failing because that's what they wanted to see, a guy who couldn't keep up with their perfect little world. I'd let them think it, played along, because it was easier than fighting their smirks and lectures. But now the truth was out, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. I grabbed my coffee mug, took a sip even though it was cold, and let my mind settle. The reunion was in 2 days. 2 days until I'd walk in there, look them in the eye, and watch their whole story about me fall apart. I'd kept this secret for 12 years, built an empire while they laughed. Now they'd have to deal with it. And me? I was just getting started. I sat there in my studio, the phone quiet now after Franklin's call and Clara's text, but my head was anything but silent. The Forbes article still glowed on the screen, my name in big, bold letters, tying me to a world I'd kept hidden for so long. It was strange, seeing it out there, proof of everything I'd done, everything I'd built. But as I leaned back in my chair, the creak of the wood loud in the stillness, my mind slipped back to where it all started. 12 years ago, I was a different guy, newly married, fresh out of grad school, full of ideas and dumb enough to think Clara's family would listen. I'd been wrong about that, and the memory of it still stung, sharp and clear like it happened yesterday. It was a sunny afternoon, one of those early days after the wedding when everything still felt shiny and new. Clara and I had just moved into a tiny apartment, barely enough room for a bed and a table, but it was ours. I brought my laptop over to her parents' house that day, excited, buzzing with this big vision I couldn't wait to share. Gerald and Margaret were in their living room, all polished wood and fancy furniture, sipping tea like they were in some old movie. Clara sat next to me on the couch, her hand resting on my knee, smiling like she was proud. I pulled up my sketches, rough designs for a digital art platform, something that could use blockchain to sell unique pieces online. I'd been reading about this new thing called NFTs, barely a whisper back then, and I could see it changing everything. This could be huge, I told them, my voice shaky but sure. Artists could own their work, sell it direct, no galleries taking cuts. I just need some startup cash to get it going. I looked at Gerald, hoping he'd see it too. He was a businessman, after all, always talking about investments and smart moves. He didn't even let me finish. He set his teacup down, leaned back in his chair, and laughed. Not a quiet chuckle, a full, loud laugh, like I just told the best joke he'd ever heard. Pictures on computers, he said, wiping his eye like it was too much. You're a grown man, son. Get a real job. Margaret didn't laugh, but she gave me that tight little smile she always had, the one that said she felt sorry for me. Clara's hand stiffened on my knee, and when I glanced at her, she wasn't smiling anymore. It's interesting, she said softly, but I could hear the doubt creeping in. I closed the laptop, my face burning, and muttered something about thinking it over. Gerald clapped me on the shoulder as we left, like he was doing me a favor. Come work at the company, he said. We'll find you a desk. Something steady. I nodded, said thanks, but inside I was boiling. That was the moment I knew. They'd never take me seriously. So I went my own way. We moved into a one-bedroom loft a few weeks later, a cheap place with peeling paint and a leaky sink. Clara started her job at a marketing firm, and I stayed home, living off ramen noodles and whatever odd gigs I could pick up, fixing computers, painting signs, anything to keep the lights on. But every night, after she went to bed, I'd sit at that wobbly kitchen table with my laptop, working. I taught myself to code, learned how blockchain worked, built my first NFT drop from scratch. It was rough, clunky designs, no fancy branding, but I put it out there anyway, anonymous, just to see. 2 hours later, it sold out. Every single piece, gone. I stared at the screen, watching the numbers tick up in my account. $5,000, then 10, then 20. It wasn't much compared to now, but back then, it was everything. I reinvested it all, better software, more art, a bigger drop. By the end of that year, I'd made 50 grand. Clara thought I'd gotten a freelance gig. I let her think that. Things kept rolling after that. I built a platform, anonymous still, no name attached, where artists could upload their work, mint it as NFTs, and sell direct. It took off fast. People loved the idea, no middleman, no galleries skimming profits. I stayed up nights moderating it, fixing bugs, adding features. Clara would wake up sometimes, find me hunched over the laptop, and sigh. "You're obsessed," she'd say, half asleep. "It's just a hobby." I'd nod, say I'd come to bed soon, and keep going. By year 3, I'd launched a second platform, cleaner, faster, with a licensing system for big buyers, galleries, brands, even movie studios. That's when the money really started coming in. 80 million by year 5, all tucked away in accounts I never told anyone about. I bought the truck then, an old beater from a guy down the street, just to keep up the act. Clara's family saw it and nodded like it made sense. Poor me, still scraping by. I could have told them then. Could have sat Clara down, shown her the bank statements, the deals I'd signed with companies across the world. But I didn't. Why? Because every time I brought up my work, even casually, they shut it down. Thanksgiving a few years in, I'd mentioned NFTs again, how they were catching on, how I'd sold some pieces. Gerald smirked over his turkey. "Still playing with your little toys," he said. Margaret changed the subject to Clara's promotion. I stopped trying after that. I built in the shadows instead, acquired competitors, signed artists, turned my platforms into an empire. By year 10, I'd hit $1 billion. I bought the island that year, a quiet little spot off the coast, just because I could. Clara thought I was at a work retreat when I went to sign the papers. Now, sitting in my studio, the memory of those early days felt like a lifetime ago. 12 years of silence, of letting them think I was nothing, all leading to this, a Forbes list with my name on it. I stood up, walked to the shelf where I kept my old sketchbook, the one with those first designs. I flipped it open, ran my fingers over the faded pencil lines. Gerald's laugh echoed in my head, and I clenched my jaw. He'd been wrong. They'd all been wrong. And in 2 days, at that reunion, they'd see it. I'd make sure of it. I set the sketchbook down, my hands steady now. This wasn't just about money. It was about proving I'd been more than they ever thought, quietly, patiently, all along. I was still in my studio, the old sketchbook back on the shelf, when the chaos really started. My phone had been quiet for maybe an hour after Franklin's call and Clara's text, but that didn't last. It buzzed again, loud and insistent, and when I picked it up, I saw the family group chat blowing up. Franklin had dropped the Forbes link, same one Clara sent me, followed by a string of shocked emojis, wide eyes, exploding heads, a cartoon guy fainting. Margaret was next, her message popping up like clockwork. Surely there's some mistake? No question mark, just that prim tone she always used, like she couldn't imagine me tied to anything as big as $1 billion empire. Gerald didn't chime in, but I could picture him sitting in his study, squinting at his phone through those thick glasses, his mouth set in a hard line. Then Marla, Clara's older sister, texted, "This has to be a typo, right?" She added a laughing emoji, but I knew her well enough to tell it was forced. Marla ran PR for the family company, always polished, always in control, and I could almost hear her brain spinning, trying to figure out how this slipped past her radar. I didn't reply. Let them squirm. I set the phone face down on the desk and rubbed my hands over my face, trying to shake off the mix of nerves and satisfaction bubbling up inside me. The article had hit like a grenade, and they were all scrambling to pick up the pieces. Clara still hadn't called, which was starting to feel heavier, her silence louder than any yelling would have been. 5 missed calls popped up on my screen then, all from her, one after the other like she'd finally snapped out of her shock. I didn't pick up. Not yet. I needed a minute to breathe, to think. This was moving fast, faster than I'd expected, and I had to figure out how to play it. That's when my other phone buzzed, the private one I kept for work, the one no one in the family knew about. It was Jules, my assistant, texting in her usual clipped way. Forbes is live. Plan reveal activated. Jets fueled. Islands prepped. Cars are en route. You good? I smiled a little, despite everything. Jules was a rock, brilliant, no nonsense, always ready to move when I said go. I typed back, good. Keep it rolling. Her reply was instant. Done. Plan reveal. We cooked it up months ago, half joking at first, when she'd warned me the press was getting close. They'll find you eventually, she'd said, sitting across from me in her tiny office, her voice flat like she was reading a grocery list. What's the move when they do? I leaned back, thought about it, and said, we show them everything. All at once. Make it impossible to ignore. She'd nodded, started making calls, and that was that. Now it was real. The private island I'd bought last year, a 200-acre chunk of paradise I'd kept off everyone's radar, was being prepped right this second. Staff were setting up the resort, the galleries, the bungalows. 3 Rolls-Royces were on their way to Gerald and Margaret's estate, ready to pick up the family for the reunion. The jet, my jet, one of 3, was fueled up, waiting to fly us all to the island. And the art installations, my pride and joy, were going live, holoscreens, LED displays, the works. It was all coming together, just like I'd planned. I stood up, pacing the studio again, my boots thudding against the floor. The adrenaline was kicking in now, sharp and electric. This wasn't just about the reunion anymore. It was personal, sure, but it was bigger than that. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email alert. I opened it, and my stomach did a little flip. It was from an international investor, some big shot I'd met at a conference years back. Subject line, merger proposal. I skimmed it. His firm wanted to partner up, fold my platforms into their portfolio, a deal worth another $2 billion on top of what I already had. We've been watching your growth, the email said. Time to take it global. $2 billion. I leaned against the wall, letting that sink in. It was tempting, more money, more reach, but it'd have to wait. This weekend wasn't about business. It was about me, Clara, her family, and 12 years of silence I was finally breaking. I forwarded it to Jules with a note. Hold off. After the reunion, she'd handle it, like always. The group chat was still going nuts. Franklin posted again. Yo, is this why you never chipped in for gas? More emojis. Marla replied. Seriously, someone explain this. I could feel their confusion, their panic, through the screen. They'd spent years building this story about me, the broke guy, the dreamer who'd never amount to much. Clara's cousin Ruben jumped in next. Wait, didn't I meet you at a pitch event like 10 years ago? You had some weird art thing? Yeah, he had. I'd pitched him my first platform, back when I was still scrambling for cash. He'd smirked, said it'd never work, and walked away. Now he was worth a fraction of me, and I bet that stung. I didn't answer him either. Let them figure it out on their own. I walked over to the window, looking out at the street again. The kids on bikes were gone, the lawnmower quiet now. It was just me and the hum of the studio, the weight of what was coming pressing down. 2 days until the reunion, but it felt like it was already starting. The article, the calls, the texts. My whole world was shifting, and I was the one turning the wheel. I thought about Clara again, those 5 missed calls. She'd be mad, sure, but what else? Hurt? Embarrassed? I didn't know. She'd always cared about what people thought, her parents, her friends, the neighbors. Me being a billionaire didn't fit her neat little picture. Maybe that's why she hadn't called again. Maybe she was too busy rewriting her own story. I turned back to my desk, picked up the gold-lettered invitation. It felt flimsy now, small compared to what I was about to bring. The Rolls-Royces would roll up soon, the jet would take off, and I'd walk into that reunion not as the guy they pitted, but as the guy they couldn't ignore. Jules had everything in motion, cars, jet, island, all of it. I just had to hold it together until then. My phone buzzed one more time, Clara, finally texting again. We need to talk. Now. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Not yet, I decided. Let her wait. Let them all wait. The article was just the start. The real drop was coming, and I'd be ready when it hit. I was still holding the phone, staring at Clara's, we need to talk. Now, text, when I heard the front door slam open. My studio's on the second floor of our house, tucked away in what used to be a guest room, so the sound hit me like a jolt. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs, and I knew it was her before she even burst in. Clara stormed through the doorway, her face flushed red, her eyes wide and wild like she'd just run a mile. She was still in her work clothes, crisp blouse, pencil skirt, heels clicking hard against the wood floor. Her purse dangled from one arm, swinging like she'd forgotten it was there. "Why didn't you tell me?" she shouted, her voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet of the room. She didn't wait for an answer, just kept going, pacing in front of my desk. "Forbes? Billionaire? $5 billion? And you didn't say a word? What is this? Some kind of sick joke?" I leaned back against the wall, crossing my arms, watching her unravel. She looked furious, but there was something else there too, panic, maybe, or fear. I kept my voice calm, steady, even though my pulse was thumping in my chest. "You never asked," I said. It was the truth, plain and simple. She stopped pacing, spun to face me, her mouth open like she couldn't believe what I just said. "Never asked?" she repeated, her tone rising. "What was I supposed to ask, huh? Hey, honey, are you secretly a billionaire? You let me think. You let all of us think. You were struggling. That stupid truck, those rowdy clothes, that time I had to borrow rent money because you said you were short. Was that all a lie?" Her hands were shaking now, and she dropped her purse on the floor, not even noticing. I took a slow breath, keeping my eyes on hers. "No," I said. "Not a lie. You just assumed. You all did." She blinked, like my words had slapped her, and for a second, she didn't know what to say. I pushed off the wall, stepping closer to my desk, feeling the weight of 12 years settle between us. "That rent thing? I wanted to see what you'd do. You offered. I took it. But struggling? That stopped a long time ago. You never noticed because you didn't want to." Her face twisted, anger flaring up again. "Don't you dare put this on me," she snapped. "You hid this. You lied to my face every day. What was I supposed to think? You're up here painting, messing with your little computer projects, while I'm out there working, keeping us afloat, or so I thought. And now I find out you're some mogul? Through a magazine?" I didn't flinch. I'd known this was coming, maybe not this exact moment, but something like it. I'd pictured it 100 times, her yelling, me standing there, the truth spilling out like paint from a tipped-over can. "You wanted to believe I was failing," I said, my voice still even. "It made you feel better. Superior. Just like your dad did." That hit her hard. Her eyes narrowed, and she took a step toward me, her finger jabbing the air. "Don't bring my father into this," she hissed. "This is about you and me. 12 years, and you kept this from me. Why? Were you laughing at me the whole time? Was this some game to you?" I shook my head, feeling a flicker of something, regret. Maybe, but not enough to back down. "No game," I said. "I tried telling you, Clara. Back when we started. I showed you the plans, the ideas. You smiled and told me to get something practical. Your dad laughed in my face. After that, I stopped talking. I just did it instead." She stared at me, her chest heaving, like she was trying to find a crack in what I'd said. "That was years ago," she shot back. "You could have tried again. You could have trusted me." "Trusted you?" I said, raising my voice for the first time. "Every time I brought it up, you sighed or changed the subject. Gerald called it a hobby. Margaret looked at me like I was a stray dog you brought home. You all decided who I was, and I let you. But don't act like I didn't try." She flinched, just a little, and I saw it, the first crack in her armor. Her shoulders dropped, and she ran a hand through her hair, messing up the perfect strands. "I didn't know," she said, quieter now. "I didn't know it was this." I nodded, stepping back to lean against the desk. "Yeah, you didn't. Because you didn't want to see it?" The room went quiet then, the only sound her breathing and the faint hum of the monitors behind me. She looked at me, really looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Her eyes were wet, but no tears fell. "So what now?" she asked, her voice small. "You're a billionaire. You've got jets and islands and whatever else. Where does that leave us?" I didn't have an answer, not yet. I just shrugged, feeling the calm settle over me again. "I don't know," I said. "That's up to you, I guess. But the reunion's in 2 days. You'll see the rest then." She frowned, confused. "The rest?" I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Jules had everything moving: cars, jet, island, and Clara would find out soon enough. She stood there, staring at me like I was a stranger, and maybe I was. 12 years of marriage, and she'd missed it all. Not because I'd hidden it so well, but because she'd never looked. "I need to think," she said finally, grabbing her purse off the floor. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door, glancing back. You should have told me, she whispered, more to herself than to me. Then she was gone, her heels clicking down the stairs, the door slamming shut behind her. I stood there, alone again, the silence thick around me. My phone buzzed, another text from the group chat. Franklin this time? Clara's pissed? Huh? I ignored it, setting the phone down. She was pissed, sure, but there was more to it. I'd seen it in her eyes, fear, not just anger. Fear that she'd been wrong about me, that she'd built her whole life around a version of me that wasn't real. I didn't feel bad for her, not exactly. She'd chosen that version, clung to it, because it fit what she wanted. Now she had to face the truth, and so did I. I walked to the window, watching her car peel out of the driveway, tires squealing against the pavement. 2 days until the reunion. 2 days until they all saw what I'd been hiding. Clara's pride was cracked now, but it wasn't broken yet. That had come soon enough. And me? I felt nothing but calm, like a storm had passed and left me standing. This was just the beginning. I woke up the next morning to the sound of birds chirping outside my window, the kind of peaceful noise that didn't match the mess in my head. Clara hadn't come home last night after storming out of my studio. I'd stayed up late, messing with a canvas just to keep my hands busy, waiting to hear her car pull in. It never did. She'd texted once, around midnight, staying at Mom's, and that was it. No fight, no follow-up, just those 3 words. I didn't reply. What was there to say? She needed space, and I needed to focus. Today was the day it all started, the reunion, the big reveal, the moment I'd been building toward for years. I rolled out of bed, my back stiff from sleeping on the couch, and checked my phone. Jules had texted, "Cars arrive at the estate in 2 hours. Jet's ready. Lars says hi." I smiled a little. Lars, the pilot, was a good guy, ex-Air Force, big laugh, loved my art. He'd lighten things up when the time came. I showered quick, threw on a plain t-shirt and jeans, nothing fancy, not yet, and headed downstairs. The house felt empty without Clara, quieter than usual. I made coffee, black and strong, and stood at the kitchen counter, staring out at the backyard. The old truck sat there in the driveway, rusted and beat up, a relic of the life I'd let them think I had. In a few hours, that life would be gone for good. I sipped the coffee, letting the heat wake me up, and thought about yesterday, Clara's anger, her shaking hands, the way she looked at me like I'd betrayed her. Maybe I had, in a way. But she'd betrayed me too, hadn't she? 12 years of dismissing me, sighing at my hobbies, never once asking what I was really doing. I'd built an empire while she rolled her eyes, and now she was mad I hadn't handed her the blueprints. My phone buzzed again. Jules, Rolls-Royces are at the estate. Family's freaking out. You sure about this? I typed back. Yeah. See you at the Jet. She didn't reply, but I knew she was on it. 3 Rolls-Royces pulling up to Gerald and Margaret's fancy countryside place, black, sleek, shining in the sun, would have stopped them cold. I could picture it, Margaret clutching her pearls, Gerald squinting out the window, Franklin snapping pictures like a kid at a car show. Clara was probably there too, still fuming, trying to figure out how to spin this to her parents. I finished my coffee, grabbed my keys, and headed out. The truck grumbled to life, same as always, and I drove the hour to the estate, the familiar roads winding through trees and fields. My stomach was tight, but not from nerves, excitement, maybe, or just the weight of what was coming. When I pulled up, the Rolls-Royces were parked in a neat row out front, their engines purring soft. The family was already outside, dressed for what they thought was a casual weekend. Gerald in a polo, Margaret in a sundress, Franklin in shorts and a loud shirt. Clara stood off to the side, arms crossed, her face tight. They all turned as I climbed out of the truck, the gravel crunching under my boots. "What's this?" Gerald called, waving a hand at the cars. "Some kind of prank?" Before I could answer, the Jet roared overhead, low enough to rattle the windows, its silver body catching the light. It circled once, then landed smooth on the private airstrip behind the estate, one I'd paid to have built years ago, back when Gerald thought I was borrowing money for rent. The side of the Jet gleamed with gold lettering, Cavill Visuals, redefining digital art. My company. My name. Their jaws dropped, every single one of them. Franklin let out a loud, "Whoa," and pulled out his phone, filming. Margaret's hand went to her chest, her pearls trembling. Gerald blinked hard, like he couldn't trust his eyes. "Is that your Jet?" he asked, his voice shaky for the first time I could remember. I smiled, easy and calm. "Yeah," I said. "One of 3. Shall we? I didn't wait for them to answer, just started walking toward the airstrip. The drivers, sharp guys in black suits Jules had hired, opened the Rolls-Royce doors, and the family piled in, slow and stunned, like they were stepping into a dream. Clara hung back, her eyes locked on me. "You're serious," she said, not a question. "Dead serious," I replied, then climbed into the lead car. She followed, sliding in beside me, her perfume sharp in the leather-scented air. The ride to the jet was quiet, the family split between the cars, no one knowing what to say. Clara stared out the window, her hands clenched in her lap. I didn't push her. Let her process it. When we reached the airstrip, Lars was waiting by the steps, grinning wide. "Hey, boss," he called, tipping his cap. "Nice day for a flight, huh?" I laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Perfect day," I said. The family trailed behind me, still dazed, as we boarded. Inside, the jet was a world of its own, cream leather seats, polished wood, hollow screens flickering to life along the walls. My NFT collections rotated on display, glowing colors and sharp lines, pieces that had sold for millions. Champagne sat chilled in buckets, courtesy of Jules. "Welcome aboard," I said, turning to face them. "Make yourselves comfortable." Franklin flopped into a seat, grinning like a kid. "This is insane, man," he said, grabbing a glass. Margaret sank down slow, her eyes darting around, while Gerald stood stiff, staring at the screens. These are yours?" he asked, pointing at the art. "Designed them, sold them, built the platforms they run on," I said. "That's what I've been doing." He didn't reply, just sat down heavy, like the wind had been knocked out of him. Marla, who'd been quiet, looked pale, her PR brain probably screaming at the missed opportunity. Reuben, Clara's cousin, fidgeted with his tie, avoiding my eyes. He knew he'd blown it years ago. Clara stayed standing, her arms still crossed. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice tight. "My island," I said, simple, like it was nothing. "You'll see." Lars's voice crackled over the speaker. "Buckle up, folks. We're off." The jet engines hummed, and we taxied down the runway, lifting smooth into the sky. I leaned back in my seat, watching them, Gerald gripping the armrests, Margaret sipping champagne like it'd calm her nerves, Franklin snapping selfies. Clara sat across from me, her eyes locked on mine, searching for something. "You're enjoying this," she said, low enough that only I could hear. "Maybe," I admitted. "Been a long time coming." She didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked away. The jet climbed higher, the estate shrinking below us, and I felt it, the weight lifting, the mask gone. They hadn't seen the island yet, hadn't seen the half of it. But they would. And when they did, there'd be no going back. I sat back in the plush leather seat of the jet, the hum of the engine steady beneath us as we cut through the clouds. The family was scattered around the cabin, Franklin sprawled out with a second glass of champagne, Gerald staring out the window like he could make sense of this from 30,000 feet, Margaret clutching her glass so tight I thought it might crack. Clara sat across from me, her face still tight, her eyes flicking between me and the hollow screens showing off my NFT collections. The art shifted every few seconds, bold abstracts, sleek digital sculptures, pieces that had sold for millions to collectors across the world. She hadn't said much since we took off, just that one line about me enjoying this. Maybe I was. After 12 years of swallowing their pity and smirks, it felt good to watch them squirm, to see the confusion on their faces as they tried to catch up. Lars's voice crackled over the speaker again, breaking the quiet. "Folks, we're starting our descent. Island's dead ahead. Hope you're ready for a hell of a view." Franklin perked up, pressing his face to the window like a kid, while Gerald shifted in his seat, his jaw tight. I leaned forward, catching Clara's eye. "You'll want to see this," I said, nodding toward the window. She hesitated, then turned, her breath catching as the jet dipped lower. There it was, my island, 200 acres of green and blue stretching out against the ocean, a sleek resort gleaming in the sun, private bungalows dotting the shore, and branded galleries rising up like modern art themselves. The water sparkled, clear as glass, and the airstrip cut a clean line across the edge. It was mine, every inch of it, bought and built with the money they never knew I had. The jet touched down smooth, Lars landing it like it was nothing, and the family sat there, stunned, as the engines wound down. I stood up, stretching my legs. "Welcome to my island," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Let's go." They followed me out, slow and quiet, stepping onto the tarmac where warm air hit us, thick with salt and flowers. A massive LED sign flashed to life as we walked toward the resort. "Welcome to the Cavill Empire. Built while you doubted me." I'd told Jules to program it months ago, half as a joke, but seeing it now, big, bold, impossible to miss, it felt right. Franklin let out a low whistle. Dude, he said, shaking his head. This is next level. Margaret's hand went to her pearls again, her eyes wide. Gerald stopped dead, staring at the sign, his face unreadable. Clara stayed close, her arms crossed, but I could see her taking it all in, the manicured paths, the glass-walled buildings, the staff in crisp uniforms waiting to greet us. We moved into the resort, a sprawling place with open ceilings and ocean views, and I led them to the bungalow's private suites I'd had set up for each of them. Pick one, I said, waving a hand. They're all yours for the weekend. Inside each room, I'd left something special, a personalized portfolio, thick binders sitting on the desks. I watched as they found them, flipping through the pages I'd spent weeks putting together with Jules. Franklin opened his first, laughing. What's this? A brag book, he said, but his grin faded as he read. It wasn't just bragging, it was proof. Letters I'd sent years ago, asking for small investments, all rejected. Gerald's was there, a note from 2012, me offering him a $100,000 stake in my first platform. He turned it down, said it was foolish. That stake was worth $160 million now. Marla's binder had emails from her PR firm, declining to represent me back when I was starting out. Now her company begged for licensing deals, and I'd said no every time. Ruben showed the pitch he'd passed on, my platform, back when it was just an idea. He'd lost out on billions. Gerald sat down hard on the edge of his bed, the binder open in his lap. This is real? He asked, his voice rough. Every word, I said, leaning against the doorway. I kept the receipts. Margaret looked over his shoulder, her face pale. You did all this, she whispered, more to herself than me. I nodded. While you thought I was failing. Franklin flipped through his, quieter now. Man, I didn't even know what NFTs were back then, he said. You tried telling me once, didn't you? I shrugged. Yeah. You laughed. He didn't have a comeback for that. Marla clutched her binder like it was burning her hands, her perfect PR smile gone. Ruben just stared at his smug VC attitude nowhere to be found. Clara's bungalow was last. She opened her portfolio slow, her fingers trembling as she turned the pages. It wasn't like the others. No business stuff, just personal. Notes I'd written her early on, sketches I'd shown her, ideas I'd shared before I gave up trying. A photo of us from year 2, me at the kitchen table with my laptop, her kissing my cheek. Under it, I'd written, you stopped asking what I was working on. She looked up at me, her eyes wet. I didn't know you were capable of this, she said, her voice barely there. I stepped closer, keeping my tone even. You never wanted to see it, I said. You like me better small. She flinched, like I'd hit her, and turned away, staring out at the ocean through the window. The air felt heavy now, the weight of those binders sinking in. They'd all had a chance to believe in me. Gerald with his money, Marla with her connections, Ruben with his venture capital, Clara with her trust. They'd said no, every time, and I'd built it anyway. I left them to sit with it, and walked outside, the sun warm on my face. The island was alive, staff bustling, screens glowing with my art, the ocean lapping at the shore. This was mine, not just the land but the victory. I'd bought it last year, a quiet move after a big deal, and named it Cavil Point. No one knew, not even Clara. Now they did. I stood by the water, hands in my pockets, feeling the breeze. Jules came up beside me, her tablet tucked under her arm. They're shell-shocked, she said, deadpan as ever. Good, I replied. They should be. She nodded, then pointed at the resort. Dinner's in an hour. Sasha's got the kitchen running. You ready for round 2? Sasha was the chef, some Netflix star I'd hired for the weekend. I smiled. Yeah, let's keep it coming. The family was quiet now, reflective, but I wasn't done. They'd doubted me for 12 years. This island, these binders, the jet, it was just the start. They'd see the rest soon enough, and I'd make sure they never forgot it. I stood on the shore of my island, the waves lapping at the sand, watching the sun dip lower in the sky. The air was warm, thick with salt and the faint smell of flowers, and the resort behind me buzzed with quiet energy, staff moving quick, setting up for the night. Jules had just left to check on things, her tablet glowing as she walked off, and I was alone for a minute, letting it all sink in. The family was still in their bungalows, probably flipping through those binders, trying to wrap their heads around what I'd shown them. Gerald's face when he saw that $160 million mistake. Pale, tight, like he'd swallowed something sour. Marla's hands shaking as she read her firm's rejection letters. Clara's whisper, "I didn't know you were capable of this," still echoing in my ears. It felt good, I won't lie, seeing them stunned, seeing the story they'd built about me crumble. But it wasn't enough yet. Tonight, I drive it home. I headed back to the resort, the glass-walled dining hall glowing soft against the dusk. Sasha, the chef, had outdone herself. 7 courses, each one plated like art, the kind of food you'd see on her Netflix show. The table was long, set with candles and crystal, the ocean stretching out dark beyond the windows. The family trickled in slow, still quiet, like they weren't sure how to act. Franklin showed up first, his loud shirt swapped for a button-down, grinning but subdued. "Smells amazing in here," he said, sliding into a seat. Margaret and Gerald came next, her in a silk dress, him in a stiff blazer, old money habits dying hard. Marla followed, her face composed again, but her eyes darted around like she was calculating something. Reuben slunk in, avoiding me, his tie loose like he'd given up. Clara was last, her hair down now, a simple black dress hugging her frame. She sat across from me, her expression unreadable. "Evening," I said, standing at the head of the table. "Hope you're hungry." "Sasha's the best," hired her straight off her show. Margaret managed a small smile. "How lovely," she said, her voice thin. Gerald just nodded, his hands folded tight. The staff brought out the first course, some kind of fancy soup, bright orange with a swirl of cream. And we ate in near silence, the clink of spoons loud against the quiet. I let it stretch, let them stew, until the third course hit the table, grilled fish, delicate and perfect. Then I stood again, signaling to Jules in the corner. She tapped her tablet, and screens descended from the ceiling, big, sleek, glowing with my timeline. "Here's the story," I said, my voice steady, filling the room. 12 years of it. The first slide popped up, 2011. A photo of me at Gerald's house, laptop open, pitching my idea. Under it, his quote, "Get a real job." I looked at him, his face red now. "You said that," I reminded him. I didn't listen. Next slide, 2014. My first NFT drop, sold out in 2 hours. Another quote, this time from Franklin. "This NFT thing won't last." He squirmed, laughing nervously. "Guess I was wrong," he muttered. I nodded. "Yeah, it lasted." The timeline rolled on. 2017, $100 million valuation, me still driving that beat-up truck. 2021, passed $1 billion, bought my first jet. 2023, acquired 2 competitors while Clara's family planned a real job, intervention I'd dodged. 2024, Forbes list, $5.1 billion. The final slide was a photo of me on this island, the day I'd bought it, standing where I'd been an hour ago. I let the screens hang there, the dates and numbers staring down at them. "For 12 years, I said. "I played the fool you expected me to be. The broke guy, the dreamer, the one you pitted at every dinner. But I wasn't failing, I was building." I paused, looking around the table. "This empire didn't happen by accident. It happened while you laughed, while you sighed, while you told me I'd never make it. I kept quiet, let you think what you wanted. Now you know." Gerald choked on his wine, coughing hard, his hand trembling as he set the glass down. Margaret stared into her plate, her fork still. Franklin leaned back, shaking his head slow. "Man," he said, "you've been holding out." Marla's voice cut through, sharp and thin. "You could have told us," she said, her PR mask slipping. "We could have helped." I turned to her, calm. "I asked you to represent me in 2015. Your firm said no, said I wasn't worth the time. Now you want in." She flushed, looking away. Reuben shifted, his chair creaking. "I didn't know it'd blow up like that," he mumbled, about his rejected pitch. "No one did," I said. "Except me." Then Clara spoke, her voice low but clear. "Why didn't you fight harder? For us to see." I met her eyes, steady. "I did, at first. You all shut it down. So I fought my way, built this instead. You just didn't notice." The room went quiet again, the weight of it pressing down. Gerald cleared his throat, his voice rough. "You've made your point," he said, but it wasn't smug anymore. It was small, almost broken. I nodded. "Good." The screens retracted, and Sasha's team brought out the next course, steak, rich and sizzling. We ate, But the air was different now. They weren't just stunned, they were humiliated, each in their own way. Gerald's pride, Marla's control, Reuben's arrogance, all cracked open. Franklin tried to lighten it, cracking a joke about the jet, but it fell flat. Reuben excused himself halfway through, muttering about the bathroom, and didn't come back. Margaret kept her eyes down, sipping wine like it'd save her. Clara didn't eat much, just pushed her food around. When the dessert came, some chocolate thing, fancy and layered, she looked up at me. "You're not the man I married," she said, soft but firm. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "No," I said. "I'm the man I've always been. You just didn't see him." She held my gaze, then looked away, her jaw tight. The meal ended quiet, the family filing out one by one, back to their bungalows. I stayed, watching the staff clear the table, the ocean black beyond the glass. Jules came over, her tablet off for once. "That was brutal," she said. "No judgment, just fact." "Needed to be," I replied. She nodded. "They're not done processing." "They'll have to," I said. "There's more tomorrow." I walked outside, the night cool now, stars sharp overhead. The timeline had hit them hard, laid out every chance they'd missed, every time they dismissed me. It wasn't just about money, it was about respect, about proving I'd been more than their pity case. They saw it now, whether they liked it or not. I felt lighter, like a weight I'd carried for years was finally off my chest. But it wasn't over. The reunion had one more day, and I had one more card to play. They'd never forget this, never forget me. And that was the point. I woke up early the next morning, the sun just creeping over the horizon, painting the ocean gold outside my bungalow. The island was quiet, the kind of stillness that felt heavy after last night's dinner. I'd slept better than I expected, the weight of that timeline off my shoulders, but my mind was already turning toward today. The family had seen the jet, the island, the binders, the screens. They knew the scale of what I'd built. But they didn't know me. Not really, not yet. Last night had been about facts, numbers, dates, proof. Today was about something else. I rolled out of bed, threw on a shirt and shorts, and stepped outside, the air warm and salty against my skin. The resort was waking up, staff moving quiet, Sasha's kitchen already humming with breakfast prep. I had a plan, but first, I needed to see where they stood. I was halfway to the dining hall when I spotted a note slipped under my door, folded neat and plain. I picked it up, my stomach tightening as I recognized Gerald's handwriting, blocky, old school, like he'd pressed the pen too hard. I opened it slow, standing there on the porch. "I was wrong," it said. "You didn't just succeed. You redefined what success looks like. I'm sorry I didn't see it." That was it. No flourish, no excuses, just those 3 lines. I read it twice, letting the words sink in. Gerald, the man who'd laughed in my face, who'd told me I'd never provide for his daughter, was apologizing. It didn't feel like a win, not exactly, more like a crack in a wall I'd spent years banging my head against. I folded the note, tucked it in my pocket, and kept walking. He'd said it, sure, but I'd see if he meant it. Breakfast was in the open-air pavilion, a spread of fruit, pastries, and coffee laid out on long tables. The family was already there, scattered around, quieter than yesterday. Franklin waved me over, a croissant in hand. "Morning, billionaire," he said, grinning, but it was softer, less cocky. Margaret nodded at me, her smile tight but real. Marla sat alone, sipping coffee, her face composed again, PR mode back on. Reuben wasn't there, probably still licking his wounds. Gerald sat with Margaret, his posture stiff, but he met my eyes when I walked in, gave me a small nod. Clara was at the far end, her plate untouched, staring out at the water. I grabbed a coffee and sat across from her, the silence between us thick. "Sleep okay?" I asked, keeping it light. She shrugged. "Not really. You?" "Well enough," I said. She didn't push it, just nodded and looked away. The meal passed slow, the family talking in low tones, weather, the island, safe stuff. No one mentioned the binders or the timeline, like they were afraid to touch it. Then Clara stood, brushing her hands on her shorts. "Walk with me," she asked, her voice quiet but firm. I nodded, setting my cup down, and followed her out. We headed down a path toward the beach, the sand soft under my feet, the waves crashing steady in the distance. She didn't say anything at first, just walked, her arms crossed tight. I let her lead, waiting. Finally, she stopped by the water, turning to face me. "I'm sorry," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Not just for doubting you. For treating you like less. I didn't see you. I didn't want to. I thought I married down, and I held on to that because it made me feel I don't know. Safe, maybe. I stood there, the wind tugging at my shirt, letting her words hang. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, the thing I'd felt for years. You thought I was a project, I said, keeping my tone even. Someone you could fix, or at least manage. She winced, but didn't deny it. Yeah, she said. And when you didn't need fixing, I didn't know what to do. So I ignored it, pushed it down. But this, she waved a hand at the island, the resort, the jet in the distance, this is you. The real you. And I missed it. Her voice cracked, and she looked down, digging her toes into the sand. I don't know how we come back from that. I took a step closer, the water lapping at my feet. You didn't marry down, I said. You married someone with vision. You just didn't recognize it because it didn't look like your dad's money or your sister's polish. I didn't need your help, Clara. I needed you to believe in me. You didn't. She nodded slow, her eyes wet now, tears spilling quiet down her cheeks. I know, she whispered. And I hate that I didn't. But I see it now. I see you. I didn't say anything right away, just watched her, the woman I'd loved for 12 years, standing there broken open. Part of me wanted to reach out, pull her close, tell her we'd figure it out. But another part, the part that had built this island, this empire, held back. Seeing me now's a start, I said finally. But it's up to you what happens next. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not pretending anymore either. She wiped her face, nodding again. I don't want to lose you, she said, her voice small. But I know I've got work to do. To fix this. Us. I didn't argue, didn't promise anything. Yeah, I said. You do. We stood there a minute longer, the waves filling the silence, then walked back slow. She stayed close, not touching, but near enough I could feel her. When we got to the pavilion, the family was finishing up, Gerald standing to meet us. Got your note, I said, pulling it from my pocket. He looked at it, then at me, his face softer than I'd ever seen it. Meant it, he said. You proved me wrong, son. Took guts. I nodded. Took time, I said. But yeah, the rest of the day passed easy, swimming, lounging, the family loosening up a little. Clara stuck by me, quiet but there, like she was testing the ground between us. Gerald asked about the jet, real questions, no lectures. Margaret complimented the island, her voice genuine. Marla even cracked a smile, offering to revisit, a deal. I laughed it off. By dusk, it felt different, not fixed, but shifting. Clara and I sat on the beach again, watching the sun sink. I'll try, she said, her hand brushing mine. That's all I can say right now. I squeezed her fingers light. That's enough for now, I said. The apologies weren't everything, but they were something, a start. And I'd take it, one step at a time. Tomorrow, I'd show them the rest. Tonight, I'd let it breathe. I woke up on the last morning of the reunion with the sun already high, streaming through the bungalow's windows and casting long stripes across the floor. The island was alive outside, birds calling, waves rolling steady, the faint clatter of Sasha's team prepping breakfast. I lay there a minute, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the weekend settle in my chest. Yesterday had been heavy, Gerald's note, Clara's apology, the slow thaw of the family's shock. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was something. Today, though, was the final piece. I'd shown them the past, the proof, the empire I'd built. Now I'd show them the future, what I was still reaching for. I rolled out of bed, threw on a clean shirt and shorts, and stepped outside, the air warm and thick against my skin. Breakfast was in the pavilion again, the same spread of fruit and pastries, coffee steaming in big urns. The family was there, looking more relaxed than before. Franklin in a loud shirt again, joking with Lars about the jet, Margaret sipping tea with a small smile, Gerald reading a paper he'd found somewhere. Marla was on her phone, probably plotting her next PR move, and Ruben sat quiet, still a little off after the binders. Clara was at the table's end, her hair loose, picking at a mango slice. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes softer than yesterday, and gave me a nod. I grabbed a coffee and sat across from her, the buzz of the family around us feeling almost normal. Big day, she asked, her voice low. Yeah, I said, sipping the coffee. Last one. She didn't push, just nodded back, and we ate in quiet, the unspoken stuff still hanging between us. After breakfast, I stood, tapping my mug to get their attention. Got something to show you, I said, keeping it simple. Meet me at the main gallery in 10. They looked up, curious, Franklin grinning, Gerald raising an eyebrow, Clara tilting her head. I didn't explain, just walked off, letting them follow when they were ready. The main gallery was the heart of the island, a sleek, open space with glass walls and high ceilings, screens and projectors built into every corner. I designed it myself, a place to showcase what I'd done and what was coming. Jules was already there, her tablet glowing, setting up the last details. "Ready?" she asked, deadpan as ever. "Yeah," I said. "Let's do it." The family filed in slow, taking seats on the curved benches facing a massive screen. I stood in front, hands in my pockets, waiting until they settled. "This weekend's been about what I've built," I started, my voice steady. "The jet, the island, the money, stuff you didn't see for 12 years. But it's not just about the past. It's about what's next." I nodded to Jules, and the screen lit up, a logo, bold and sharp, Cavil Collective. Murmurs rippled through them, Franklin leaning forward, Clara's eyes narrowing. "This is my new project," I said. "A decentralized platform for artists, global, open, no gatekeepers. Anyone can join, mint their work, sell it direct. No galleries, no middlemen, just creators and buyers. Projected valuation, $10 billion in 5 years." Gerald let out a low whistle, rare for him. $10 billion? He repeated, like he couldn't believe it. "That's the plan," I said. "It's what I've been working toward, freedom for artists like me 12 years ago, who didn't have a shot otherwise." The screen shifted, showing mock-ups, clean interfaces, artist profiles, live auctions. "It's live next month," I added. "Already got 1,000 creators signed up. Big names too. This isn't just a business, it's a movement." Franklin clapped, loud and sudden. "That's dope, man," he said, grinning. Margaret smiled, real this time. "Very impressive," she said, her voice soft. Marla nodded, her PR brain clearly spinning, but she didn't pitch anything, not yet. I turned to Clara, catching her eye. "This is who I am," I said, quieter now, just for her. "Not the truck, not the paint stains. This." She held my gaze, then nodded slow, like she was finally getting it. I looked back at the group. "You doubted me once. That's done. Now you see." They clapped, awkward at first, then stronger, even Gerald joining in, his hands stiff, but there. It wasn't wild cheering, but it was real, and that was enough. I stepped back, letting Jules take over, walking them through the tech side while I slipped outside. The gallery's deck overlooked the ocean, and I leaned on the railing, breathing deep. Jules found me later, the family still inside, buzzing about the platform. "Good reveal," she said, standing beside me. "They're hooked." "Hope so," I replied, watching the waves. She paused, then asked, "Was it worth it?" The silence, the pretending. I thought about it, 12 years of biting my tongue, letting them think I was less, building in the shadows. "Yeah," I said finally. Success wasn't the goal. Freedom was. And now they see me for who I am. She nodded, no argument, just fact. They do. The family came out eventually, heading back to pack up. The jet was leaving soon. Clara hung back, walking over to me. "That's incredible," she said, her voice soft. "What you're doing." "Thanks," I said, turning to face her. She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. "I meant what I said yesterday. I'll try to see you, to fix us." I squeezed her fingers, light. "I know. We'll see where it goes." She smiled, small but real, and we stood there a minute, the ocean stretching out endless in front of us. Later, I watched them board the jet, quiet, reflective, changed. Lars waved from the cockpit, Franklin snapping one last photo, Gerald giving me a nod that felt like respect. Clara sat by the window, looking out at me as the engines roared. I stayed on the tarmac until they were gone, the jet a speck in the sky, then walked back to the gallery alone. Inside, I grabbed Gerald's note from my pocket, the one he'd slipped under my door, and pinned it to a board next to a printout of my first NFT sale, $500, 12 years ago. 2 pieces of my story, side by side. I stepped back, looking at them, then around at the space, the screens, the art, the empire I'd built in silence. They'd never forget me now, not after this. The jet, the island, the platform, it was all out there. Undeniable. I'd framed my past and my future, laid it bare for them to see. And as I walked out, the sun setting red over the water, I felt it. Freedom, real and solid, mine at last. The reunion was over, but my story? That was just getting started. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the pot of coffee I just brewed, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Marissa, my wife, or at least she still was, legally speaking. The text popped up, and I swear it felt like someone dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. Hey, just a heads up. Mom's hosting a small thing for Eli's birthday Saturday. We kept it tight, just family. Hope you understand. I read it once, then twice, because my brain couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Just family? Eli's my son. My little boy, the one I'd rocked to sleep 100 times, the one whose diapers I'd changed in the middle of the night while Marissa snored away. His first birthday, and I'm not invited? My chest tightened, like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed it hard. I blinked at the screen, trying to make sense of it, but all I could feel was this sharp sting, this betrayal cutting deeper with every second I stood there. I couldn't just let it sit there, festering like that. My hands were shaking, but I hit the call button anyway. Marissa picked up after 2 rings, her voice all light and airy, like she was talking about the weather. It's just a birthday, Cal. Don't make it a thing. Don't make it a thing? My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. This wasn't some random barbecue or a girl's night out. It was Eli's first birthday, a milestone I'd been picturing for months. I'd stayed up late imagining the cake, the goofy grin he'd have when we sang to him, the way I'd scoop him up and tell him he was the best thing I'd ever made. And now she was acting like it was nothing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be there. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out rough, raw. He's my son too, Marissa. How is this not a thing? She sighed, that little huff she does when she's annoyed, and said, look, it's Mom's thing. She wanted it small. You'll see him another day. Another day. Like I was some weekend visitor, not his dad. I hung up, my pulse hammering in my ears, and before I could stop myself, I dialed Doreen, Marissa's mom. She answered with that fake sweet tone she uses when she's about to shut you down. Callum, hi. What's this about? I didn't waste time. Why am I not invited to Eli's birthday? She didn't even pause, just launched right in. It's more of a maternal side event, nothing personal. We're keeping it simple. Nothing personal? I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat like a jagged rock. Eli's my kid, and they're boxing me out like I'm some distant cousin who sends a card once a year. I wanted to yell, to tell her how wrong this was, but she kept going, her voice sharp now. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Callum. It's one day. One day. My son's first birthday. I hung up on her too, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I walked into the living room, still reeling, and there it was, a half-finished Lego tower Eli had been playing with the last time he was here. Those little blue and red bricks, scattered across the coffee table, hit me like a punch to the gut. I could still see his chubby hands stacking them, hear his giggle when they'd fall over. That was my boy, my life, and they were cutting me out of it. Something snapped inside me, this hot, angry thing that I couldn't push down anymore. Fine. If they didn't want me there, if I wasn't family enough for them, then I wouldn't be around at all. I grabbed my phone again, my thumb hovering over the screen, and I started looking for a way out. Not just out of the house, but out of this whole mess they'd made. They could have their maternal side of it. Without me, I'd be gone, and they'd see what it felt like to miss someone who mattered. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't sticking around to beg for a seat at a table they didn't even set for me. My heart was still racing, but now it wasn't just hurt, it was purpose. I'd show them I didn't need their permission to live my life, to feel like I mattered. Eli might not remember this birthday, but I damn sure remember how they made me feel, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. I sat down on the couch, right next to that Lego tower, and started scrolling, looking for somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't here. They'd pushed me out, and I was done pushing back. It was time to walk away. The kitchen felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in, but I didn't care. I poured myself a coffee, the steam rising up as I leaned against the counter, my mind spinning. I wasn't just mad. I was done. Done with Marissa's breezy excuses, done with Doreen's smug little rules, done with feeling like I had to prove I belonged in my own son's life. I took a sip, the heat burning my tongue, and it felt good, like it was waking me up. I wasn't going to call again, wasn't going to argue. They'd made their choice, and now I was making mine. I'd find a place to go, somewhere far from their balloons and their cake and their just family nonsense. I didn't need their invitation. I'd make my own plans, my own peace. And maybe, just maybe, they'd realize what they'd lost when I wasn't there to pick up the pieces anymore. I set the mug down, harder than I meant to, and it clinked against the counter. My eyes drifted back to the phone, to that stupid text still glowing on the screen. Hope you understand. No, I didn't understand, and I wasn't going to pretend I did. I opened a browser, my fingers moving fast now, searching for flights, hotels, anything that'd take me away from this. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't spending Saturday sitting here, staring at these walls, while they celebrated without me. They wanted a tight little party? They could have it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't reach me, and I'd make damn sure it was better than anything they could have planned. That Lego tower caught my eye again, and I felt a pang, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about Eli, this was about them, and I wasn't playing their game anymore. I couldn't sleep that night, not after the way everything had gone down in the kitchen earlier. The house was quiet, too quiet, and it gave my thoughts too much room to bounce around. I ended up on the couch, a beer in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through an old photo album I'd kept on there. Pictures of Eli popped up, tiny, wrinkled, fresh from the hospital, his little fist curled up while Marissa slept in the background. I'd taken those shots, bleary-eyed and grinning like an idiot, because I couldn't believe he was mine. There were others too, me reading him bedtime stories, his head tucked under my chin, or the two of us at the park, him laughing as I pushed him on the baby swings. Those moments were everything to me, the glue that kept me going through the late nights and the fights with Marissa. And now, his first birthday was coming, this big, bright milestone, and they were telling me I wasn't essential. Like I was some extra piece they could leave out of the puzzle. The beer tasted bitter, or maybe that was just me. I set it down and rubbed my face, trying to shake the weight pressing on my chest. I kept seeing the text from Marissa, those cold little words, just family, and Doreen's voice, smooth and sharp, calling it a maternal side of it. It wasn't just that they didn't invite me, it was that they didn't even think I'd care. Like all those nights I'd spent pacing the floor with Eli, all those mornings I'd made his bottles, didn't count for anything. I wasn't going to sit here and take it, though. I wasn't going to let them erase me from his life one small thing at a time. My hand was trembling, but I grabbed my phone again, this time with a purpose. I wasn't calling anyone, I was done talking. I opened a travel app instead, the screen lighting up my face in the dark living room. At first, I scrolled through beach resorts, picturing sand and sun and a drink with one of those little umbrellas. But that didn't feel right, too loud, too crowded. I needed something else, something that'd strip away all this noise in my head. Then I saw it, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Snow, mountains, cabins tucked away where no one could find me. It hit me like a lightning bolt. This was it. I could see myself there, standing in the cold, breathing air that didn't smell like resentment. I tapped through the options fast, my heart pounding now, but not from anger anymore. A private cabin, a ski pass, a first-class flight out of here. It was all right there, waiting. I didn't care about the cost. I just wanted out. I booked it all in one go, my fingers slamming the confirm button like it was a lifeline. The next morning, I woke up with a crick in my neck from the couch, but I didn't care. The sun was barely up, and I felt different, like I'd taken a step I couldn't take back. I grabbed my phone and called Jude, my boss, before I could second-guess myself. He picked up quick, his voice gravelly like he'd just rolled out of bed too. Cal, what's up? You okay? I didn't sugarcoat it. I need some time off, Jude. Starting tomorrow. I'm heading out of town. There was a pause, and I braced myself for questions, but he just chuckled, low and easy. You deserve some space, man. Take it. We'll manage without you for a bit. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Thanks, Jude. I owe you. He laughed again. Nah, you don't. Just don't freeze your ass off wherever you're going. I hung up, and for the first time in days, I felt lighter. The house didn't feel so small anymore. It felt like a launch pad. I got up, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to make coffee, my mind already racing with what I'd need to pack. Wyoming wasn't just a getaway, it was a statement. They could have their party, their balloons, their cake. I didn't need it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't touch me, and I'd make it better than anything they could throw together. I poured the coffee, the smell filling the room, and leaned against the counter, staring out the window. The backyard was still, just grass and a couple of trees, but in my head, I was already seeing snow-covered hills and pine trees stretching up to the sky. I took a sip, letting the heat sink in, and started planning. I'd need my heavy coat, some boots, maybe a hat, stuff I hadn't touched since last winter. I'd pack light, though. I didn't want anything weighing me down. This wasn't about running away, it was about taking control. They thought I'd just sit here, waiting for scraps of time with Eli, but they were wrong. I wasn't going to beg for a place in his life. I built something for myself instead. The coffee mug warmed my hands, and I felt a small, hard smile tug at my mouth. Jackson Hole wasn't just a trip. It was my way of saying I wasn't disposable. They could keep their tight, little party. I'd be gone, and they'd feel it. I set the mug down and headed to the bedroom, pulling my duffel bag out from under the bed. It was old, a little beat up, but it'd do. I tossed it on the mattress and started grabbing clothes, sweaters, socks, a pair of gloves I'd forgotten I owned. Every item I threw in felt like a brick in a wall I was building between me and them. I didn't know what I'd find out there in the snow, but I knew it'd be better than sitting here, staring at that half-finished Lego tower and feeling like I didn't matter. I zipped the bag shut, the sound loud in the quiet room, and stood there for a second, breathing hard. This was it. I was really doing it. And for once, I wasn't looking back. I stood in the bedroom, my duffel bag zipped up and sitting on the bed like a quiet promise. Packing it had been slow, deliberate. Every sweater I folded, every pair of socks I tucked in, felt like I was putting on armor. Not the kind that protects you from a fight, but the kind that keeps you standing when someone's already knocked you down. The house was still, just the hum of the fridge in the kitchen breaking the silence, and I liked it that way. It gave me space to think, to let the decision I'd made last night settle into my bones. I was leaving. Jackson Hole was waiting, and I wasn't going to let anything pull me back. Not guilt, not second thoughts, nothing. I grabbed the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed downstairs, my boots thumping on the steps. It felt good, that weight on my back. It was mine, something I'd chosen. My phone buzzed as I hit the bottom stair, and I almost ignored it. But I glanced at the screen, and there it was, a flood of messages lighting up like warning lights on a dashboard. Marissa's name popped up first. You sure you don't want to come? It's no big deal. I stared at it, my jaw tightening. No big deal. She was still acting like this was some casual thing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be at my own son's birthday. I scrolled down, and there was Doreen. Don't make this about you. That one hit like a slap, and I could hear her voice in my head, all prim and cutting. Then Kylie, Marissa's sister, chimed in. Hope you're not serious. Eli won't remember. I let out a sharp breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. They didn't get it. Not one of them. This wasn't about Eli remembering. This was about me, about what it meant to be his dad, and they were stripping that away like it was nothing. I dropped the bag by the front door and sank onto the couch, my phone still in my hand. Part of me wanted to fire back, to type out everything boiling inside me. How they gutted me with this. How they didn't have the right to decide where I belonged. But what was the point? They'd just twist it, make me the bad guy for feeling anything at all. Instead, I opened the camera roll, found the picture of my plane ticket I'd screenshotted last night. First class to Jackson Hole, departure tomorrow, and stared at it. That was my answer, right there. Not words, not arguments, but action. I switched to my social media app, the one I barely used anymore, and posted the ticket with a caption. If I'm not invited, I'm unavailable. I hit send before I could overthink it, and the little notification sound felt like a door slamming shut. Good. Let them see it. Let them know I wasn't sitting here waiting for their permission. The phone buzzed again almost instantly. Likes, comments, a couple of shocked emojis from old friends I hadn't talked to in months. I didn't read them. I didn't need their opinions either. I tossed the phone onto the cushion next to me and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The half-finished Lego tower was still there on the coffee table, and it caught my eye again. I could almost hear Eli's laugh, that high-pitched squeal he'd let out when I'd knock it over on purpose just to see him smile. My chest ached, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about abandoning him. It was about refusing to let them treat me like I didn't matter. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, I had to get out, had to breathe air that didn't taste like their rules. I got up, grabbed my coat from the closet, and checked the time. I still had a few things to do, pick up some thermal socks, maybe a new pair of gloves, stuff I'd need for the snow. The airport shuttle was booked for tomorrow morning, and I wanted to be ready. I stepped outside, locking the door behind me, and the cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. It wasn't Wyoming cold, not yet, but it was a taste of what was coming. I walked to my truck, the duffel still slung over my shoulder, and tossed it in the back. Driving into town, I kept the radio off, letting my thoughts run. I pictured Marissa reading that post, her lips pressing into that thin line she does when she's mad. I pictured Doreen scoffing, telling whoever would listen that I was being dramatic. Good. Let them talk. I wasn't there to hear it. At the store, I moved quick. Socks, gloves, a scarf I didn't really need but grabbed anyway. The cashier, a kid with a bored look, barely glanced at me as he rang it up. Big trip? He mumbled, nodding at the pile. Yeah, I said, keeping it short. Heading somewhere cold. He shrugged, like it didn't matter, and it didn't, not to him. But to me, it was everything. I paid, grabbed the bag, and headed back to the truck. The sky was gray now, clouds rolling in, and it matched how I felt, stormy, but steady. I drove home, the streets quiet, and pulled into the driveway just as my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Whatever they had to say, it could wait. I was done answering. Back inside, I dropped the shopping bag by the duffel and went to the kitchen. I made a sandwich, ham, cheese, nothing fancy, and ate it standing up, leaning against the counter. The house felt different now, like it was just a pit stop, not a home. I washed the plate, set it to dry, and glanced at the clock. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. I grabbed my phone one last time, saw the notifications piling up, more messages, more reactions, but I powered it off. Silence. That's what I wanted, what I was chasing. I headed upstairs, lay on the bed without bothering to change, and closed my eyes. The duffel was packed, the ticket was posted, and I was gone, maybe not yet, but in every way that mattered. They'd see it soon enough. I stepped off the plane in Jackson Hole, and the cold hit me like a wall, sharp, crisp, and so different from the stale air I'd left behind. It rushed into my lungs, stinging a little, and I stood there on the tarmac for a second, just breathing it in. The mountains loomed in the distance, jagged and white, like something out of a painting I couldn't have dreamed up. I'd made it. My duffel bag hung heavy on my shoulder, but I didn't mind. I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The resentment, the hurt, all that mess with Marissa and Doreen, it was still there. Sure, but it was quieter now, muffled by the wind whipping across the runway. I adjusted my coat and headed toward the lodge shuttle, my boots crunching on the thin layer of snow already dusting the ground. The shuttle driver, a guy named Wes, gave me a nod as I climbed in. He was older, maybe 50, with a scruffy beard and a voice that sounded like he'd smoked one too many cigarettes. First time in Jackson? He asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror as he pulled away from the airport. Yeah, I said, settling into the seat. Needed a change. He chuckled, low and easy. You picked a good spot for it. Nothing like these mountains to clear your head. I didn't say much after that, just watched out the window as the town slid by little shops with wooden signs, snow piled up on the curbs, peaks rising higher the further we went. Wes kept talking, pointing out landmarks, telling me about some bar with the best chili in town. I nodded along, half listening, but mostly I was soaking it in, the quiet, the space, the fact that no one here knew me or cared why I'd come. The shuttle wound up a narrow road, trees closing in on both sides, and then there it was, my cabin. It sat alone, tucked against a hill, all dark wood and big windows glowing soft in the fading light. Wes dropped me off with a wave. Enjoy the solitude, man. Holler if you need a ride back. I thanked him and hauled my bag up the steps, the cold biting at my fingertips as I fumbled with the key. The door swung open, and I stopped dead. A fire was already crackling in the stone fireplace, the heat washing over me like a welcome. Flannel blankets were draped over a big leather couch, and those floor-to-ceiling windows showed nothing but snow and trees stretching out forever. Outside, a hot tub steamed under a little overhang, the water bubbling quietly. It was perfect, better than I'd pictured when I booked it in that angry haze back home. I dropped my bag by the door and walked to the windows, pressing my hand against the cold glass. The silence was thick, broken only by the pop of the fire, and it felt like a reset button had been hit. No buzzing phone, no voices telling me what I should feel, just me and this place. I pulled out my phone, snapped a quick selfie with the fire glowing behind me, and posted it. No balloons, no drama, just silence. I didn't check the likes right away, just tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the little fridge the lodge had stocked. The first sip was cold, sharp, and I sank into the couch, letting the warmth from the fire seep into my bones. This was what I'd needed, what I'd been chasing when I'd clicked that confirm button. Not just a trip, but clarity, something to remind me I didn't have to beg for a place in anyone's life. The cabin smelled like pine and smoke, and I closed my eyes for a minute, listening to the wind outside. I could have stayed home, could have fought harder to be at that party, but what would that have gotten me? A seat at the edge of the table, a forced smile while Doreen made her little jabs? No, this was better. I opened my eyes and looked around again, the wooden beams overhead, the thick rug under my feet, the way the firelight danced on the walls. It wasn't just a hideout, it was mine, something I'd chosen when they'd left me no choice at all. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and stood up to unpack. Not much, just the sweaters and socks I'd thrown in, the gloves I'd bought last minute. But it felt good to settle in, to make this space real. I stepped outside to check the hot tub, the cold slapping me awake again. The steam rose in thick clouds, and I dipped my hand in. Hot, almost too hot, perfect for later. The sky was darkening, stars starting to poke through, and I stood there, hands in my pockets, letting it sink in. Back home, they'd be setting up for Eli's party tomorrow, streamers, cake, all that noise, and I wouldn't be there. Part of me ached at that, a quick, sharp pang when I thought of Eli's face, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about him, it was about them, about how they decided I didn't fit. I went back inside, the warmth wrapping around me again, and grabbed another beer. The phone was lighting up now, likes, comments, probably some messages, but I ignored it. I didn't need validation from anyone back there. What I needed was this, the crackle of the fire, the cold glass in my hand, the quiet that let me hear my own thoughts for once. I sat back down, stretching my legs out, and let my mind wander. Tomorrow, I'd hit the slopes, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I'd booked a lesson, figured I'd start slow, but the idea of it, the speed, the cold air rushing past, made my pulse kick up a little. It was something new, something for me, not tied to anyone else's plans or rules. I took another sip, the beer settling me, and glanced at the fire. The log shifted, sending up a spray of sparks, and I felt a small, real smile tug at my mouth. This wasn't just escape, it was freedom. They could have their party, their maternal side of it. I had this, and it was already more than they could have given me. The night stretched out ahead, quiet and mine, and I leaned back, ready to let it unfold. I woke up to sunlight streaming through those big cabin windows, the kind of bright that bounces off snow and makes everything look sharper. The fire had burned down to embers overnight, but the room was still warm, cozy in a way I hadn't felt in forever. I stretched, my back popping from the couch where I'd crashed, and for a second, I just lay there, listening to the quiet. No phone buzzing, no voices, just the soft whistle of wind outside. It was Saturday, Eli's birthday, and back home, they'd be blowing up balloons, setting out snacks, getting ready to sing without me. The thought stung, but I shook it off. I'd made my choice, and I was here now in Jackson Hole, with a day ahead that was all mine. I got up, made coffee in the little kitchen, and stood by the window, mug in hand, watching the mountains glow under the morning sun. This was my therapy, and it was already working. I'd booked a ski lesson for today, something to keep me moving, to keep my head from spinning back to what I was missing. I pulled on my gear, thermal socks, the new gloves, a jacket I hadn't worn in years, and grabbed the ski pass from the counter. The lodge shuttle picked me up right on time, Wes behind the wheel again, grinning like he'd been waiting to see me. Skiing today? Huh? Good call, he said, pulling onto the road. Powder's fresh, best day for it. I nodded, managing a small smile. First time in a while. Hope I don't eat it too bad. He laughed, a rough, friendly sound. You'll be fine. They've got good folks up there to show you the ropes. The ride was quick, the hills rolling by, and I felt a flicker of excitement, something I hadn't expected. This was new, and I needed new. At the ski rental shop, I met Lane, my instructor. She was maybe 30, with short hair tucked under a beanie and a grin that said she'd seen her share of shaky first-timers. Callum, right? Ready to hit the snow? She asked, handing me a pair of skis. Yeah, I said, taking them, the weight solid in my hands. Let's see if I remember how this works. She walked me through the basics, how to clip in, how to shift my weight, how to stop without plowing into a tree. Her voice was calm, steady, with a little edge of humor that made it easy to listen. We started on a gentle slope, just a practice run, and I wobbled at first, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. But then I got it, the rhythm, the lean, and I made it down without falling. Lane clapped, grinning. Not bad, Cal. You're a natural. I laughed, breathless, the cold air burning my lungs. Tell that to my knees. The next run was steeper, faster, and I felt it, the rush, the way the wind cut past me, the snow crunching under my skis. My mind went blank, no room for anything but the slope and the next turn. It was exactly what I'd needed, this clean wipe of everything back home. Lane kept me going, pushing me a little harder each time, and by the end, I was grinning like a kid, sweat soaking my shirt under the jacket. "You're hooked now," she said, unclipping her skis. "Tomorrow, we'll try something bigger." I nodded, still catching my breath. "Deal." The mountains stretched out around us, wide and endless, and I felt steady for the first time in days. Back at the cabin, I peeled off my gear and headed straight for the hot tub. The water was scalding, steam rising into the cold air, and I sank in with a groan, a bourbon in hand from the bottle I'd found in the cabinet. The heat melted into my muscles, and I leaned my head back, staring up at the sky turning pink and orange. It was peaceful, perfect, and then my phone buzzed on the ledge where I'd left it. I almost ignored it, but I glanced over messages, piling up again. "Trent, my brother-in-law, why are you being so dramatic?" "Doreen, of course, you abandoned your own son." I stared at them, the bourbon glass cold against my palm, and felt a laugh bubble up, short, hard, empty. They were still at it, still trying to drag me back into their mess. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my camera, snapped a shot of the mountain glowing in the sunset, and posted it. Sometimes, peace is the best gift you can give yourself. Then I tossed the phone aside, letting it clatter on the wood. The water bubbled around me, and I took a slow sip of the bourbon, the burn matching the heat on my skin. Back home, they'd be cutting cake right about now, singing to Eli while he clapped his little hands. I pictured it for a second, his face lit up, Marissa smiling, Doreen fussing over everything, and it hurt, but not as much as I'd thought it would. I wasn't there, and yeah, that sucked. But this was mine. The mountains, the snow, the quiet, they didn't get to take that away. I closed my eyes, letting the steam wrap around me, and thought about the day. Skiing with Lane, feeling my body figure it out, the way the world shrank down to just me and the slope. It was simple, clean, and I hadn't realized how much I'd needed that until now. The sky darkened, stars popping out one by one, and I stayed there, soaking, sipping, letting the cold air mix with the heat. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. Whatever they had to say, it could wait forever if I wanted. I wasn't their punching bag anymore, not their fallback guy to blame when things went sideways. I finished the bourbon, set the glass down, and sank lower in the water, the jets rumbling against my back. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe grab a beer at that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, though, this was enough: the hot tub, the mountains, the silence. I'd left their party behind, and out here, I was finding something better. Peace wasn't just a word. It was this, right here, and I wasn't letting it go. I woke up Sunday morning to the smell of coffee brewing in the cabin's little machine, the kind of slow drip that fills the air with something steady and warm. The hot tub had knocked me out last night, and I'd slept hard, no dreams, just a deep, blank rest I hadn't had in weeks. I rolled off the couch, my muscles stiff from skiing but loose from the soak, and grabbed my phone off the counter where I'd left it. The screen was lit up with notifications, but one stood out, a voicemail from Amira, my cousin, the only one in the family who ever got me. Her name made me pause, a little spark of curiosity cutting through the haze. I poured a mug of coffee, the steam curling up, and hit play, leaning against the counter as her voice crackled through. "Call me. You are not going to believe what happened." That was it, short, sharp, with a laugh behind it. I grinned despite myself. Amira always had a way of pulling me out of my own head. I took a sip of the coffee, strong and black, and dialed her back. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "Cal, oh my God, where do I even start?" she said, her voice buzzing with energy. "The party yesterday, it was a train wreck. You dodged a bullet, trust me." I set the mug down and walked to the window, the mountains stretching out white and calm under the morning sun. "What happened?" I asked, keeping it casual, but my pulse kicked up a little. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I could not ask. Amira didn't hold back, she never did. "Okay, so it starts fine, right? Balloons, cake, Eli's all cute in his little hat. Then Doreen gets up to make this toast, and get this, she says something about men who couldn't make it, all smug like she's scoring points. Marissa rolls her eyes, but you can tell she's pissed." I snorted, picturing it, Doreen with her wine glass, that fake smile she wears like a mask. "Sounds about right," I said, and Amira laughed. "Oh, it gets better. So Derek shows up, you know, your buddy from work? He's invited, which is already weird since he's not family, and he brings his new girlfriend. Guess who? Marissa's old roommate, Tara. The one she hates." I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. "No way." "Yes way," Amira said, glee in her voice. "Marissa's face, Cal, I wish you'd seen it. She goes white, then red, and Kylie's over there losing it, yelling at Derek like he planned it. Meanwhile, Doreen's trying to play peacemaker, but she snaps at some random and instead, and Eli, he's overstimulated, screaming his head off. I laughed, a real one this time, sharp and loud in the quiet cabin. Keep going, I said, leaning into the story now. Amira was on a roll. So someone, nobody's owning up, knocks over the cake trying to calm Eli down. It's this big, fancy thing, chocolate and frosting everywhere, and Marissa just screams. Like horror movie screams. People start leaving, grabbing their coats, and the whole thing's over before the sun's even down. It was chaos, Cal. Absolute chaos. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting it sink in, the warmth spreading through me as I stared out at the snow. Yes, I picked the right weekend to disappear, I said, and Amira cackled. You have no idea. They're all blaming each other now. Doreen's mad at Marissa, Kylie's mad at Derek, and somehow you're the bad guy for not being there to fix it. I shook my head, setting the mug down on the windowsill. The fire was still smoldering from last night, and I tossed a log on, watching the flames catch. They can't pin this on me, I said, more to myself than her. Oh, they're trying, Amira said. Marissa's been whining to anyone who'll listen, and Doreen's acting like you cursed the whole day by leaving. It's ridiculous. I grinned, poking at the fire with the iron rod. Let them spin it however they want. I'm not there to hear it. Amira's voice softened a little. Good for you, Cal. Seriously. This trip, it's the smartest thing you've done in a while. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, it is. We hung up after that, and I stood there by the fire, the heat licking at my hands. The cabin was quiet again, just the crackle of the logs and the faint hum of the wind outside. I pictured the party falling apart, Doreen's toast, Derek and Tara walking in, the cake hitting the floor, and it felt like a movie I'd walked out of halfway through. I didn't need to see the ending. I already knew it was a mess. And here I was, miles away, with coffee in my hand and mountains out my window. I didn't feel guilty, not like they wanted me to. I felt satisfied, like I'd bet on myself and won. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through the messages I'd ignored last night. Trent, Doreen, Kylie, all the same noise, trying to drag me back into their drama. I didn't answer. What was there to say? They'd made their party, and it had blown up in their faces. I wasn't the one who'd knocked over the cake or started the yelling. I took my coffee back to the couch and sat down, stretching my legs out. The sun was climbing higher now, turning the snow outside into a sheet of white fire. I thought about Eli for a second, his little hat, his cries, and it tugged at me, but not enough to pull me under. I'd see him soon, away from all that mess, just me and him. The fire popped, sending a spark up the chimney, and I leaned back, letting the warmth settle over me. Amira's call had been a gift, a front-row seat to their collapse without having to sit through it. I didn't need to gloat. I just needed this quiet distance, a space where their voices couldn't reach. I finished the coffee, the mug empty now, and set it aside. Outside, the day was waiting, maybe another run on the slopes, maybe just a walk through the snow. Whatever it was, it'd be mine, not theirs. They could keep their imploded party. I had this, and it was better than anything they could have ruined. I sat by the fire that afternoon, the cabin glowing soft with the light bouncing off the snow outside, when my phone started buzzing again. The logs crackled, spitting little sparks, and I almost didn't check it. I was getting good at ignoring the noise. But the screen kept lighting up, one message after another, and I gave in, grabbing it off the couch with a sigh. Marissa's name popped up first. This wouldn't have happened if you'd just come. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the words, and felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat. Typical, everything goes to hell, and somehow it's my fault for not being there to mop it up. Next was Doreen. You left us to deal with this mess. That one made my jaw clench, the nerve of her acting like I'd abandoned some sacred duty. Then Kylie, you made Eli's first birthday about you. That hit harder, a cheap shot, and for a second, I pictured Eli's face, his little hands clapping, but I shook it off. They were grasping, flailing, trying to pin their disaster on me. I set the phone down hard, the clack loud against the wood of the coffee table, and leaned back, rubbing my face. They excluded me, shut me out of my own son's birthday like I was some stranger, and now they wanted me to feel bad because it fell apart. I laughed again, short, joyless, the sound swallowed by the cabin's quiet. They didn't get it, and they never would. I wasn't the one who'd turned Eli's day into a circus. That was on them, on Doreen's snide toast and Marissa's grudges and whoever'd smashed the cake. I grabbed my coffee mug from earlier, still half full and cold now, and took a sip anyway, the bitterness matching my mood. The fire popped, and I stared into it, letting the heat sink in while their words rattled around in my head. My phone buzzed again, and I almost chucked it across the room, but it was Amira this time. I opened it quick, expecting more gossip, and she didn't disappoint. Doreen just told Grandma you cursed the party. She said it's bad blood. Grandma's not buying it, though. I grinned, a real one this time, picturing Grandma Ruth tiny, fierce, with a tongue that could cut glass. If anyone could see through Doreen's nonsense, it was her. I could hear her now, rolling her eyes, telling them all to stop whining. Bad blood, I muttered to myself, shaking my head. More like bad planning and worse attitudes. I didn't text Amira back yet, just set the phone down and stood up, stretching my legs. The cabin felt too still all of a sudden, like I needed to move, to shake off the weight they were still trying to dump on me. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, the cold hitting me like a slap, crisp and clean. The snow crunched under my boots as I walked toward the trees, no real plan, just needing the air. The mountains loomed ahead, steady and silent, and I stopped, hands in my pockets, breathing deep. Back home, they were probably still spinning their blame game. Marissa crying to her friends, Doreen lecturing anyone who'd listen, Kylie sulking like a kid. And here I was, the scapegoat, the one they'd decided to pile it all on. It'd be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I kicked at the snow, sending a little puff into the air, and thought about how predictable they were. Exclude me, then act shocked when I didn't stick around to take their crap. The wind picked up, rustling the pines, and I turned back toward the cabin, my breath fogging in front of me. Inside, the fire was still going strong, and I tossed another log on, watching the flames flare up. My phone was where I'd left it, glowing with their messages, and I made a decision. I was done with it. I opened each one, Marissa's, Doreen's, Kylie's, and HitBlock, one by one. The screen went quiet, and it felt like cutting a rope I'd been tangled in. Amira's number stayed. She was the only one worth keeping. But the rest? Gone. They could yell into the void all they wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. I tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the fridge, the cold glass sharp against my hand. I sank back into the cushions, the fire warming my feet, and took a long sip. Blocking them wasn't just about shutting them out. It was about taking back what they'd tried to steal. They didn't get to dictate how I felt. Not about Eli. Not about myself. I pictured Grandma Ruth again, probably sitting in her old chair with that look she gets, telling Doreen to quit her dramatics. Bad blood, I said out loud, smirking. If anything, the bad blood was theirs, spilling it all over each other while I was out here, free of it. The beer went down easy, and I let my head tip back, the cabin's quiet wrapping around me like a blanket. Outside, the sky was turning gray, clouds rolling in over the peaks, but it didn't bother me. Let it snow, let it storm. I wasn't going anywhere. This trip wasn't just a break. It was a line in the sand. They'd made me the bad guy, fine. I'd play that part, but on my terms, not theirs. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and grabbed the flannel blanket off the armrest, pulling it over my legs. The firelight danced on the walls, and I felt something settle in me, anger still, sure, but quieter now, mixed with something stronger. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done spinning with them. Amira's text about Grandma stuck with me, a little lifeline to the family that still made sense, and I held on to it. The rest? They were on their own. I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking in, and let the day fade out, their voices lost in the crackle of the fire. I woke up Monday morning with the cabin still dark, the kind of quiet that only comes with snow muffling the world outside. The fire was just embers now, a faint glow in the hearth, and I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling beams. My phone was silent, no buzzing, no notifications, thanks to the blocks I'd put up yesterday. It felt good, like I'd finally turned off a radio that had been blaring static for too long. I didn't know what Marissa or Doreen or Kylie were saying now, and I didn't care. I'd given myself this, Jackson Hole, the mountains, the space, and I wasn't letting them claw it back. I sat up, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and decided right then, I wasn't ready to go home. 5 more days. That's what I'd give myself. I grabbed my phone, opened the travel app, and extended the trip, cabin, ski pass, shuttle, all of it. Done. The coffee machine gurgled as I set it going, and I stepped outside to feel the air. It was cold, sharp enough to sting my face, and the snow had piled up overnight, a fresh layer blanketing the porch. The mountains stood tall against a pale sky, and I breathed it in, letting it fill me up. Back inside, The coffee was ready, and I poured a mug, the heat seeping into my hands as I leaned against the counter. Today was mine. No plans yet, just possibilities. I'd booked a backcountry ski tour with Lane later, something she'd mentioned during our lesson, and I was already looking forward to it, the quiet of the trails, the burn in my legs. But first, I wanted to soak this in, this feeling of being untethered. The ski tour started mid-morning, and Lane met me at the lodge, her grin as easy as ever. "Ready for the real stuff?" she asked, tossing me a pair of poles. "Let's see if you can keep up." I laughed, clipping into my skis. No promises. We headed out, away from the main slopes, the snow crunching under us as the trees closed in. It was different out here, wilder, quieter, just the sound of our breathing and the swish of skis. Lane led the way, pointing out tracks in the snow, deer, maybe a fox, and I followed, my body settling into the rhythm. The air was cold, my lungs burning, but it felt good, like I was shedding something with every push forward. We stopped at a clearing, the mountains rising sharp around us, and I caught my breath, the world so still it almost hummed. Back at the lodge that evening, I stumbled into a whiskey tasting in the bar, a little setup with wooden tables and a guy pouring samples from bottles I'd never heard of. I joined in, sliding onto a bench next to a couple from Vermont, Mel and Jonas. They were older, maybe 60, with quick laughs and stories about skiing here every winter. "What brings you out here solo?" Mel asked, her eyes crinkling as she sipped her drink. I took a swallow of the whiskey, smooth, smoky, and shrugged. "Missed a birthday party. Best decision I've ever made." Jonas chuckled, raising his glass. "To that, then. Family can wait." We clinked, and the warmth spread through me, not just from the drink, but from the ease of it. No judgment, just company. We swapped stories, mine about the slopes, theirs about a moose they'd seen last year, and the night blurred into laughter and refills. Later, back in the cabin, I stoked the fire and grabbed my phone, the whiskey still buzzing in my head. I snapped a shot of the fireplace, the flames licking up, and posted it. I don't fix family messes anymore. That job's been outsourced to karma. I tossed the phone aside and sank into the couch, the blanket pulled over my legs. The silence from my blocked numbers was golden. No texts, no guilt trips, just the crackle of the fire and the faint howl of wind outside. I thought about Mel and Jonas, how simple it had been to sit with them, no history dragging us down. That's what I wanted now, moments that didn't come with strings. The firelight danced on the walls, and I let my mind drift. Back home, they were probably still reeling from the party, Marissa licking her wounds, Doreen spinning her tales. I didn't need to know the details. Amira would fill me in if it was worth it. For now, I had this. The cabin, the snow, the day I'd carved out for myself. I pictured Lane out on the trail, her easy confidence, and the way Mel had patted my arm like I was an old friend. It wasn't just escape anymore. It was something I was building, piece by piece. The whiskey lingered on my tongue, and I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking deep. 5 more days stretched ahead, and I could feel them, open, clean, mine. I got up, grabbed a glass of water to cut through the buzz, and stood by the window. The snow was falling again, soft and steady, burying the world outside. I didn't feel trapped, though. I felt free. No contact, no apologies, just me and this place. I thought about that post, the one about karma, and smirked. Let them figure it out. I wasn't their cleanup crew anymore. I finished the water, set the glass down, and headed back to the couch, the fire still going strong. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe hit that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, I pulled the blanket tighter and let the quiet take over. This was what I'd come for: clear skies, clear head, no one else's mess to carry. The night settled around me, and I leaned into it, ready for whatever came next, as long as it was mine. I woke up Tuesday to the sound of snow tapping the cabin windows, a soft, steady rhythm that pulled me out of sleep. The fire was out, just a pile of ash now, and the room was cool, but I didn't mind. I lay there for a minute, staring at the wooden ceiling, feeling the quiet wrap around me like a second blanket. My phone was still on the couch where I'd tossed it last night, and I didn't reach for it, not yet. The whiskey tasting with Mel and Jonas lingered in my head, their easy laughter, the way they'd toasted my escape without prying. It had been a good night, simple and light, and I wanted to hold on to that. I got up, stretched my stiff legs, and started the coffee, the familiar gurgle filling the silence as I looked out at the snow piling up. It was a new day, and I wasn't letting anyone back home pull me out of it. The coffee was hot, burning my tongue a little as I took the first sip, and I decided to call Amira while it cooled. She picked up quick, her voice bright despite the early hour. Cal, you still alive out there? I grinned, leaning against the counter. Barely. Too much whiskey last night. She laughed, loud and sharp. Good. You deserve it. Things here, though, they're a mess. I took another sip, bracing myself. What now? She didn't hesitate. Marissa's been crying to everyone. Her friends, Trent, even the mailman probably. Says the party was a disaster because you weren't there to keep things steady. Doreen's blaming Marissa for not controlling Derek and Tara. Kylie blocked half the family after some big fight with Trent, and he started this group chat to fix everything. It's a circus. I shook my head, smirking into my muck. Sounds like they're doing fine without me. Oh, it gets better, Amira said, her tone gleeful. Grandma Ruth told them all to grow up, called Doreen a meddling hen to her face. She's the only one keeping it real. I laughed, picturing Grandma's glare, that no-nonsense way she cuts through the noise. Wish I'd seen that, I said, and Amira snorted. You should've. Anyway, Marissa sent you an email, figured you blocked her texts. Said she needs to talk when you're back. I froze, the mug halfway to my mouth. An email. Of course she'd find a way around. She can wait, I said, keeping my voice flat. I'm not rushing back to play therapist. Amira's voice softened. Good. Stay out there, Cal. They'll figure it out, or they won't. Not your problem. We hung up, and I set the phone down, staring at it for a second. An email. I didn't open it, didn't even look for it. Whatever Marissa wanted, it could sit there, unread, until I was ready. If I ever was. I finished my coffee and grabbed my ski gear, the routine settling me. The snow was still falling outside, light and steady, and I headed for the slopes, the shuttle picking me up with Wes at the wheel again. Back at it? He asked, grinning. Can't stop now, I said, and he nodded like he got it. Lane was waiting at the lodge, and we hit a steeper run this time, my legs burning as I carved through the powder. I went faster, freer, the wind whipping past, and it felt like I was leaving more than just tracks in the snow. After the run, I stopped at the lodge gift shop, my breath still fogging in the cold. I wandered the aisles, not looking for much, until I saw it, a small sketchbook, leather-bound, with a pencil tucked in the spine. It caught my eye, and I grabbed it, an idea sparking. Back at the cabin, I stoked the fire and sat down, the book open on my lap. I wasn't an artist, not really, but I started sketching anyway, a rough outline of the mountains I'd seen today, jagged peaks under a wide sky. Then, below it, I added the date I'd left, the day I'd boarded that plane. My liberation day. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I liked how it looked, simple, solid, a mark of something I'd claimed. I thought about turning it into a tattoo, something permanent to carry with me. The idea stuck, growing as I flipped the pencil between my fingers. I'd always wanted ink, something small but real, and this felt right, a mountain range, that date, a reminder of when I'd stopped letting them define me. I sketched it again, cleaner this time, and leaned back, the fire warming my legs. Amira's words echoed, Marissa crying, Doreen pointing fingers, Kylie sulking, and I let them drift away, smoke up the chimney. They were spiraling, just like she'd said, and I wasn't jumping in to stop it. Not anymore. The snow kept falling outside, burying the porch, and I got up to grab a beer, the cold bottle a contrast to the heat in the room. I didn't check my email, didn't even glance at my phone. Marissa's "we need to talk" could wait forever if I wanted. I sat back down, the sketchbook still open, and took a sip, the firelight flickering over the page. I pictured her typing that message, maybe pacing her kitchen, thinking I'd come running. She was wrong. I was here, sketching mountains, skiing slopes, letting their mess spin out without me. The beer went down easy, and I added a few more lines to the drawing, sharp edges, a little shadow. It was rough, but it was enough. I leaned back, the blanket pulled over my knees, and watched the flames. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe ask Lane about that bar Wes kept mentioning. For now, this was it, the cabin, the snow, the sketch in my hands. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done circling with them. The fire popped, and I smiled, small but real. This trip wasn't just a break, it was a beginning, and I was holding on to it, one line at a time. The night stretched out, quiet and mine, and I let it settle, the weight of their chaos left far behind. I woke up Monday morning, the last day of my extended trip, to a sky so blue it looked like it had been painted on. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving everything outside the cabin crisp and bright, the kind of morning that makes you want to stand still and take it in. I rolled off the couch, my back creaking from too many nights there, and started the coffee, the familiar smell filling the air as I shuffled to the window. The mountains glowed under the sunrise, soft pinks and oranges spilling over the trees, and I stood there, mug in hand, watching it unfold. This was it, my last day in Jackson Hole, and I didn't feel that pull to go back, not yet. I'd found something here, something I wasn't ready to let go of, and I wanted to hold it tight before the real world came crashing in. I took my coffee outside, stepping onto the porch in my boots and coat, the cold biting at my face as I leaned against the railing. The air was sharp, clean, and I sipped slow, letting the warmth fight the chill. Back home, Marissa's email was probably still sitting there, unread, and the thought of it didn't twist me up like it might have a week ago. Doreen's blame, Kylie's whining, all their noise, it was distant now, like a radio station I'd tuned out. I pictured Eli for a second, his little grin, and that ached, but it wasn't enough to drag me under. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, this sunrise, this quiet, it was mine, and I wasn't trading it for anything. I went back inside, the fire still dead from last night, and decided to skip it. No point building one just to leave it burning. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture of the sunrise through the window, the light catching on the snow like sparks. I posted it, my fingers moving fast. Turns out I didn't miss much. I gained everything. I didn't check the likes, didn't wait for replies, just tossed the phone onto the couch and finished my coffee standing up. The words felt true, solid, and I didn't need anyone's approval to back them up. I'd come here raw, cut open by that text from Marissa, and now I was leaving with something better, peace, clarity, a line I'd drawn for myself. I packed slow, folding my sweaters, stuffing the socks into the duffel, the sketchbook tucked in last. That mountain drawing, the date below it, it was rough, but it meant something, and I wasn't letting it get lost in the shuffle. The cabin felt smaller now, like it was ready to let me go, and I took one last look around, the big windows, the leather couch, the hearth where I'd burned through their drama night after night. It had been good to me, this place, and I zipped the bag shut with a nod, like I was thanking it. The shuttle was coming soon, west behind the wheel one last time, and I'd be on a plane by afternoon. But I wasn't done with the day yet, I wanted one more piece of it. I headed to the slopes, the snow crunching under my boots, and rented skis for a quick run. Lane wasn't around, but I didn't need her. I'd figured it out enough to go solo. The lift carried me up, the cold wind whipping past, and I looked out over the valley, the trees dusted white, the peaks standing tall. At the top, I pushed off, fast and free, my legs steady now, the rhythm second nature. The snow flew around me, the world blurring into white and blue, and I laughed, loud, real, the sound swallowed by the mountain. It was over too quick, but it was enough, a last taste of what I'd found here. I unclipped at the bottom, my breath fogging, and handed the skis back, my chest light. Back at the cabin, I grabbed my bag and waited for Wes, the sun climbing higher now. He pulled up right on time, grinning through the window. "Leaving already?" he asked as I climbed in. "Yeah," I said, tossing the duffel in the back. "Gotta get back eventually." He nodded, pulling onto the road. "You look different, man. Lighter." I shrugged, managing a small smile. "Feels that way." He didn't push, just drove, the hills sliding by as we headed for the airport. I watched them go, the snow, the pines, and felt a pang, not regret, but something close to gratitude. This place had given me more than I'd expected, and I wasn't forgetting it. At the airport, I checked in, the ticket in my hand a quiet end to it all. The flight was smooth, the mountains shrinking below me, and I leaned back, the sketchbook in my lap. I didn't open it, just held it, the weight a reminder. Back home, I'd land in the mess, Marissa's email, whatever fallout was waiting, but I wasn't the same guy who'd left. I'd set a boundary here, one they couldn't cross, and I'd stick to it. No more showing up where I wasn't wanted, no more swallowing their shame. The plane hummed, and I closed my eyes, the sunrise still burned into my head. When I got home, the house was dark, quiet, just like I'd left it. I dropped the bag by the door and stood there, the Lego tower still on the coffee table. It hit me, Eli, the birthday I'd missed, but I didn't let it pull me down. I'd see him soon, just us, no circus. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, cracked it open, and stepped outside, the night cool and still. The stars were out, not as bright as Wyoming's, but enough. I raised the bottle to the sky, a small salute to the horizon I'd left behind, and whispered, "Here's to peace." The first sip was cold, sharp, and I grinned, zero regret, all gain. Whatever came next, I'd handle it my way, and they'd have to figure out how to live with that.